cactus and succulent growers, it's Lynn, and welcome to the August video with the cacti and succulent questions and answers for my subscribers. And I've got some lovely questions from some subscribers here that want to know some plant queries, that some help with. And if you've got any questions you want to know about growing cacti and succulents that you want to put forward for the September video of the question and answers, then do please leave a comment down below in the video description on what you want to know about cacti and succulents. I'll do my best to help. I may not know the answers to every question, but I'll certainly do the best I can. So here we go. This is the first question, and this is by Reborn Shoe Bag. And the question is, can I graft a euphorbia lactia onto a serious peruvianus cactus? Well, the answer to that is no. And the reason for it is because botanically, euphorbia and cactus plants have very different plant cells. Now, euphorbias contain a white milky sap called latex. And this is some of my euphorbias here. And when they sort of get damaged or they get cut, they give off a little bit of a white milky sap. And this is the latex. And cacti, their plant cells are very different. And because of that, cacti cannot be grafted onto euphorbia. So that's the first question. The second one is by subscriber DFJ-A01. And also a very similar question as well about grafted plants. And the question is, you don't appear to have any grafted plants, cactus plants, in your collection. Is this something you have tried in the past? And what are your views on this practice? And do you have a secret grafted cactus collection that's kept off camera? Or do you prefer to grow everything on its own roots? Now, the answer to that is I don't have any grafted cacti in my collection. And that's because I just prefer not to have grafted plants. I'm not a fan of grafted plants myself, but I do know many growers that have some absolutely incredible grafted specimens. And the only time I probably would consider grafting will be if I had a very rare special cactus, such as one of these here, such as my Strombocactus disciformis or my Epiolantha micromeris, and they got rot. Then I'd consider trying grafting. But other than that, I don't like to have grafted plants because I just don't think it's natural. But that's nothing against growers who do have grafted plants. I've seen some gorgeous, gorgeous specimens of grafted plants in many of my cactus friends' collections. And so no, I don't have any grafted plants myself because this is something I just prefer not to have grafted plants. And have I ever tried it in the past? I haven't. I've never actually tried grafting. And the reason for that is it just looks a little bit complicated to me. It's just something I've not tried because I've not really been into grafting. But in the future, as I mentioned, if any of my very special cacti sort of got root rot and I had to cut them back, then I would consider trying to graft them maybe on top of a Preskyopsis cactus or the like. Now the next question is by my friend Rai Catcher. And Rai wants to know, my question is, how can I tell the difference between corking, which is a natural corkiness on cacti, rust damage, or red spider mite damage? I'm going to show you the differences between all of the three. Now, first of all, corking. Now, corking is something that naturally happens to many types of cactus plants as they age. And I have made a complete video on corking on cactus plants, why it happens and what it looks like. And if you want to know more information about corking on cactus plants, then I'm going to link up above and also down below in the video description to corking on cactus plants. And do check that video out because I show you loads of examples in there on corking, and I also mention why it happens. But a little bit in brief here. This is an example of some of my cacti that have got corking. This is one of my old fero cacti here, big old fero cactus. As you can see, it's got this brown sort of dark coloration at the bottom, but it's not rot or anything like that. This is what happens with cactus plants as they age. They get this brown corking. Same with this down here. This one is doing the same, and also with this one. I did show you some other examples of different types of cacti as they get the brown corking. Yep, even on this one here, this is sort of more of a silver corkiness, but that's something that does happen to them as they age. Perfect example there with the brown sort of orangey corking on this big old echinopsis, and also all the corking as well on that big prodia as well. This is totally normal, and you often see very commonly on plants such as echinopsis as an example there, and also many times on astrophytums as they age, as you can see. That's natural corkiness. And I'm going to show you the difference with rust. Rust is a bit of a type of fungus that does attack many different types of plants, but particularly cacti. Particularly, I don't really have a problem with rust on any of my other cacti except for lophoforas. And here I'm going to show you another perfect example of what rust looks like. Lophoforas are very, very prone to it, and I've had this happen a lot in the past with quite a few of my different type of lophoforas. Funny enough, when I've treated them, it's sort of the rust does go away. I mean, that's an example of what rust can look like there. That's been treated now and it's completely healed over. Other example as well of rust. Last year I did a video on rust on lophophora cactus plants, what it looks like and how to treat. So do go over and watch that video. I'll link that video also up above and down below in the video description, because I show you what rust fungus does look like on lophophora cacti, and also if you get it on other cacti. Personally myself, rust, and try to show you a very good example, because actually all my lofts are actually sort of healed from any type of rust at the moment, but this is past damage as well on here. And in that video on the rust, you'll see a lot more detailed video footage of when this one got the rust and it's healed over. I use a copper powder fungicide to treat rust, and it does get rid of the rust, stops it from coming back as well, as I explained in that video. So rust is very different to natural corkiness. The next thing is the red spider mite or spider mite. Now, also while I'm on the lofts, perfect example to show you spider mite damage. And this is what spider mite damage looks like here. It gives a very sort of silvery, orangey corkiness at the very top of the plant. And this is how this lophophora has outgrown the damage from past spider mite damage. It's sort of creating a lovely sort of bit of an Aztec pattern. It's absolutely gorgeous how when it grows out. This is recovering really well, as you can see, all the new growth. But when you first get the spider mite, it does leave this, as you can see, past damage there, like an orangey, silvery, yellowy scabbing at the top. That's an example there. They're all recovering, and I treat that with neem oil. It works absolutely brilliant. But like with all treatments, you do have to keep reapplying it, because if you don't, spider mite will come back. And this year has been quite good for me for spider mite damage, because it's been quite wet. This is sort of much sunnier today. Weather seems to be a little bit better here for August. And the dampness has kept a lot of pests away. And I've also been able to come in here much more regularly and spraying all of the cacti and succulents with neem oil to prevent spider mite damage. It also has some protection against rust as well, and other types of fungus diseases that cacti can get. Sorry for the plane noise, guys. So if you want to know how to use neem oil to treat red spider and also other type of spider mite on cacti as well as succulents, do check out a video I've made as well on how to use neem oil for prevention and treatment of spider mite. Links to that video up above and down below. But I'm just going to show you another example of spider mite damage. It's very different to sort of rust or natural corking. These are some of my camelobivias. Really are spider mite magnets, as are my Raybutias. That's past spider mite damage there, as you can see, the big sort of corking at the top, and then all the new growth that's come out there. Same with this as well. With these, very prone to it, but as I say, the neem oil works really well with that. Now the next question, also by Rycatcher, is I'm unable to collect rainwater. Can we use fish tank water conditioner in tap water? And would this make the tap water suitable for watering cactus? Now, I just want to mention, I personally have never ever tried this. I've never used fish tank water conditioner in my water to bring down the pH or to make it softer for cacti. I have heard of other growers, mostly on Facebook groups, that have said they've been using fish tank water conditioner, such as there's one called Stress Coat, and it helps bring the pH down of their hard tap water, and they use it on their cacti, and they say the cacti are doing really well. I've never used it myself, so I honestly can't answer that question. Say yes, you can. I personally would be very wary of any type of water conditioners that are not meant for plants, because they still contain chemicals, and obviously cacti and fish are very different. A fish doesn't necessarily drink the water. The water conditioner helps to keep their scales conditioned, and also helps to protect the water as well. I used to keep fish many years ago. I had quite a lot of fish tanks, so I sort of know that. But it's a great water conditioner for fish. Cacti, however, absorb water from their roots, and they store it in their plant bodies. So if they're storing the water that's been conditioned with chemicals, I really don't know how it's going to affect them. So I can't say no, because I've never tried it. And as I mentioned, I've heard of other growers that have had great success using water conditioner, but I certainly myself can't recommend it. However, guys, if you've used water conditioner for fish on your plants and it's been great, do let me know in the comments down below. Maybe you can answer this for rye catcher as well. And what I have done in the past, when I lived in the south of Ireland in Waterford and Sligo, the water was very hard, and I used to use white vinegar. I used to buy a big tub of white vinegar, and I'd use a few teaspoons in there, and it would bring the pH down. Now the next question is by subscriber Erez Galfand, and he wants to know any advice, and this is obviously I've answered this just now, but any advice on grafting? For example, can you graft a loafer fora onto euphorbia? Well, as I mentioned in the first question, unfortunately you can't graft any cactus onto euphorbia, because botanically they're very, very different. As I mentioned, euphorbia contain a milky latex sap, and cacti have very different plant cells. You can't graft cactus onto euphorbia. You can graft euphorbia onto euphorbia and cactus onto cactus, but the two cannot be mixed, grafted together, because they're very botanically different. Now the next question is by Marlene Prescott. And she wants to know, my question for you is, are the brown markings on my cacti, especially astrophytum? I live in the Caribbean, so no winter, only sun and rain. Now, the brown markings on astrophytum and many other cacti, again, is down to, like what I mentioned earlier, natural corking, and it's completely harmless. And just show you down there, this is one of my big astrophytum ornate. So this is my big astrophytum ornatum with the brown corking at the bottom. This is an astrophytum capricorn as well, with brown markings, and this is normal as they age. But sometimes brown scabbing on cacti, natural corking as well, can be caused by environmental. So Marlene, if you're living in the Caribbean, lucky you. But obviously you get a lot of warm weather all the time, and also sunshine and rain. And sometimes all these different type of environmental changes with the weather can cause natural scabbing and corkiness. So that's nothing to worry about. But if it's only at the base, then this is completely normal and down to natural corkiness. And it sort of adds character to a maturing cactus. Now the next question is by Dave Scott. And Dave wants to know, what's the cactus or succulent you have owned the longest? Now, the reason I've gone into this greenhouse here is going to show you an example of one of mine I've had the longest. I've had this since I was 12 years old. So this one at the back here, can't really reach. It's a Pelasgia chichipi. And it's one that I got for my brother when I was 12 years old. And rather than go through all of the plants, because I got a few at the same time, I have also made a video on my channel on the cactus plants I've had in my, and succulent plants I've had in my collection the longest. So do check that video out. I think I sent Dave a link to that video at the time, I'm not sure, but do check that video out, guys. Links to that will also be, there's only so many links you can put up above, so if it's not up above, it'll be down below in the video description. Do go and check out the video link. I show you there all of the cacti and succulents that I've had the longest in my collection, that I've had for a very, very long time. But this is an example. This is showing you one of them here, a Pelasgia chichipi, that I had since I was 12 years old, so very, very long time now. Back in the polytunnel now, and here's another example of one of my Hawortias. Also since I was 12 years old. This was one I got from my brother as well. So you know, 40 years, they're 40 years old, very old plants, and lots more in my collection I've had a very long time as well. I'll just show you here an example. Yep, this one as well is one that I've had for 40 years. I've had to repropagate this plant multiple times over the years, but that's from the original genetics as well. But do check the video out to check out the oldest cactus plants and succulent plants I've had in my collection. As I say, that video will be down below. The next question is by David, another David Robbins, and he wants to know, what are your watering methods? And how long does it take you to water a lot of plants, with a lot of plants? Do you do a pre-soak and then re-water, and after pre-soak, and do you water at night? Well, first of all, it takes me, it does take about 3 hours to water every single plant in this big polytunnel and in my white greenhouse as well. A good 3 hours. I have a big water bucket out the back, and I just dip in a load of watering cans, put them in here, and then just water one. I also use a big watering hose as well to reach all the ones at the back that I can't reach, or any of the ones that's sort of hard to get in between the pots with the watering can. And I have made quite a lot of videos on how I water my cacti and succulents as well. But just putting it in brief, it takes about 3 hours for me to water all of these. And I always do it towards the end of the day. If not in the evening, depending on how tired I am. I tend to do it at the end of the day. So when the sun has gone down, that's when I'll give them all a very good water. If, however, time only gives me the opportunity to do it in the morning, I will water very early in the morning, but nearly always water at night. Always better to water them at night, because cacti are resting, then they're able to take up the water better of an evening time. So that's why I like to do it. I notice if I was to give them all a good water in the morning, sometimes they can be pretty much dry again before they have chance to really take up the water. But doing it of an evening, they have all the evening with the cooler nights as well, the cooler temperatures, they take up water so much better. So always towards the end of the day, into the early evening, into the early night. And David wants to know, do I do a pre-soak first? Well, what I do, I only water my cacti and succulents, the majority of them, in the spring and summer and into the early fall. I start watering from, depending on the temperature, and if it's a fairly good spring, I would start watering anything from mid-March to the beginning of April. And then I start watering from about the middle of September. The only cacti and succulents I would still water will be some of my echeveras, because they do shrivel out very quickly in the winter, and some of my aloes, because there's a lot of them are winter bloomers as well, so I'll still water them. And also my epiphytic cacti, such as my epiphyllums and ripsalis that are in the polytunnel, and also my Schlumberger truncatas and Thanksgiving Christmas cacti. I will still keep these watered, because they're winter growers and flowering. But the majority of all my other desert cacti I will keep totally bone dry, no water at all, from the middle of September up until the middle to late March. This year I was late starting them all up in water because we had a very cold spring, so I didn't really start watering any of the desert cacti really until I think it was nearly May, and I did do a video and I watered them for the first time after the winter. But once they're back into the growing season, I water them every time the soil has dried out in their pots, depending on the weather. We've had a very wet summer, so I haven't been in here watering them as regularly, because they haven't had to be watered as regularly. It's been cloudy and wet, and I've just been giving them a bit of water as and when I can see they need it. But normally with an average summer, spring and summer, I'd be watering them all every time the soil has totally dried out in their pots. They're cacti, so if you're not sure, it's best to go that little bit longer before watering rather than water them when they're already wet. So I water them quite freely in the spring and the summer months, but not at all during the winter. The only time I would give them a pre-soak is when I first start them up in the watering after the winter. When it's springtime and I give them the watering for the very first time, because they've been so dry for so long over the winter months, I would give them a little bit of a pre-water. I would water them and make sure the soil has been watered. Any of the water that's still hanging around, I'd make sure I mop it all up from the tray so they're not sitting in wet water. And then I'd go and give them a proper, deeper watering a couple of days later, once they've had a chance to, the soil has moistened up again and the roots are starting to wake up with the feeling of that water on their roots and the damp soil. So that's the only time I'd give a pre-soak. That's after the long winter rest. After that, I just water, give them a good watering, wait till they're totally dry out, give them a good watering again until mid-September. Now the next question is by Cactus Queen. And what a fantastic name. I love that, Cactus Queen. And the question, Rich, she wants to know, with aloe plants, I've seen lots of videos where they state you can propagate them by a leaf. What's your views on this, please? Well, these are all my aloes here. I've got a mixture of aloes, haworthias, gasterias, and many different types. I have them here in a little bit more of a sheltered, shadier spot here. And they seem to do really well. And I've had great success with propagating gasteria, certainly sansevieria, with leaf cuttings. But however, aloe plants, I've tried many times to propagate them from a leaf cut and it's never worked for me, ever. However, saying that, I also know people who say they have done it from a leaf cutting, so maybe it's just me. But myself, I've never had success with it. Let me know in the comments down below if you've propagated aloe from one single leaf and it's worked for you. But the answer to that is, can it be done? Well, I'm sure it can, but it's not the easiest way. Aloes are always best propagated from their plantlets. They do produce lots of plantlets. As you can see, this is one of my aloes here. They produce these little plantlets from the base. And I've also grown aloe from seed as well. These are all what I've grown from seed a good few years ago. Very easy to grow from seed. But I've never had any success with rooting from leaf. Now the next question is by Cowl Stuff. And Carl wants to know, did your brother ever see the 40-year-old cacti that he gave you? Well, as I mentioned in the other question about the oldest plants in my cactus collection, they were given to me by my brother. And I have sent him photographs in the past of what they look like now, and he's absolutely amazed. And hopefully he'll come and visit me one day in Ireland to see them for himself. So yes, he has seen them in photographs, but he hasn't seen them in real life for a very long time. So that is going to be a happy day when he sees what they look like in real. Now the next question is by Marion Daniels, and she wants to know, my streaked cactus won't grow. What am I not doing right? Now, by streaked cactus, I wasn't quite sure what Marion actually meant, so apologies Marion if you mean something different, but I assume you mean variegated. Some people might call them streaked. And if it's not growing, well, I don't really have any variegated, in fact I don't have any variegated cacti in my collection, but the most common variegated one will be a Gymnoclisium mahinavinci, and you often see them with the lovely sort of green and red coloration to them. They're beautiful, and this one has got a bit of a red coloration to it, but I wouldn't really call it variegated as such. They tend to be more slow growing anyway, so it may be that your cactus is just very slow growing and it's doing what it's meant to do. However, if it's a cactus you've had for a very long time and it's really not doing anything at all, it's just sitting there and it's 3 or 4 years later, and the first thing I would recommend doing is obviously checking the cactus over. You need to remove it from its pot. Has it got root mealybug? Does it need to be repotted? Is it getting enough sunlight? You know, is it in a sunny position? And are you watering it regularly? I mean, I know some people have said to me, Lynn, I have had a cactus 5 years and it never grows. And you find out when you ask more questions to them that they only water it once a year or something like that. A cactus isn't going to grow at all if that's the case. It may even be dead. It could just be a hollow shell. So the answer to that is check your cactus thoroughly. If you can't see any problems with pests on the outside or nothing, it looks outwardly okay, remove it from its pot and do check over the root system. And maybe it just needs a bit of a repot, more regular watering, maybe it needs a bit of fertilising, or maybe it just needs a lot more sunshine. Now the next question is by my friend Magda at Cactus Cactus. And Magda wants to know about Easter Cactus. And she said, my question is about Easter Cactus care, as I seem to struggle with growing them. Now Magda, my wonderful friend Magda, has a lovely YouTube channel here called Cactus Cactus. She's very knowledgeable on cacti and has an incredible epiphytic cactus collection. She has beautiful ripsalis and other types of epiphytic cacti. So if you're not familiar with Magda's channel, Cactus Cactus, do go over and check Magda out. I'll link Magda's channel up above and also down below in the video description. But Easter Cactus is one that I also struggle with. Now the strange thing is I do really well with all of my epiphytic types of cactus, such as epiphyllums, ripsalis and Schlumbergera Christmas and Thanksgiving. They do really well for me. I have some in the house as well and some outside in the yard. However, it's a different story with Easter Cactus. I'm just going to show you mine out in the yard. Now here out in the yard, and I've got some Easter Cactus here. I've got some in the polyton as well I'm going to show you. And as you can see, it doesn't look great. This is a Schlumbergera Thanksgiving cactus I've also got in the same pot. This is my other Easter Cactus. But if you could have seen this only a couple of weeks ago, it was all in beautiful bloom. And what's remarkable about Easter Cactus is that they tend to, when they're first coming to growth again in the spring, they come alive and they fatten up with the leaves and they put on a lot of growth and they burst into flower. Mine do really well for me in the spring. Come into midsummer, late summer, mine go a bit like this now. They start to look a bit tired looking and they start to sag and they drop a lot of leaf segments. I don't really know why either, but I'm not the only one that grows Easter Cactus that has this problem. As you can see, I have this out in the yard. It's a little bit protected from midday, well, it's protected from sun, as you can see here. It's just under the oil tank and it does get plenty of rain as well, which it seems to like. Got seed pods on it, but I always struggle to grow these myself. I find they drop leaf segments and they're not the easiest to grow. Here are some more Easter Cactus I've got here, and these are ones that have grown from seed as well in here, and they seem to be doing okay. But as I say, they have a habit of also just keep dropping their leaves and never do, but they don't die. They just keep dropping leaves and they suddenly perk up again and carry on growing. So they're surviving, but they're not thriving. So Magda, you're not alone when you say that you struggle with them. I think so many people do. As you can see, all of my other the Thanksgiving and Christmas absolutely thrive for me with no problems, but Easter Cactus I struggle with, unfortunately, too. Now the next question is by Brittany Boynak, and she's got two questions here. The first one is, can you prune a bear's paw succulent? I'm afraid it might kill the plant to prune it back. And yes, the good news is you can prune it perfectly okay. I've got a couple of them here in my collection. This is one of my bear's paws here, and this one is called, just check the proper name of this one here. This is Cotyledon tomentosa bear's paw, and it has lovely sort of fuzzy furry leaves. And I've also got a variegated one as well, and this one is a recent addition from my wonderful friend Danny Rose, and very gorgeous variegated one here. And they're very easy to prune back. They can grow quite large, and pruning them back is not going to hurt them. And perfect opportunity as well, you can take cuttings. What you want to make sure that you do is you cut, whenever you're taking cuttings of succulents, same with all plants really, you cut just below a node. And these are the nodes where the leaves come out of here. So just below a node there. And I would always recommend sort of going at least 2 inches of stem when you take the cutting and remove any of the lower leaves. So yes, you can definitely prune them back to keep them more compact. Now the last question, this is also by Brittany Boynack as well. She wants to know, do you find that grow lights can encourage etiolation? And that is when cactus and succulent plants grow stretched out. And how can you tell if it's at the right brightness level for your plants other than the recommended distance? Now, I have quite a few grow lights in my grow room. I tend to have them on more during the winter months, just to give a bit of additional light to my cacti and succulents that's overwintering. But if you're using grow lights, the one sort of thing that the grow lights tend to do, not all of them, it does depend on the type of grow light you have and there's many different types of bright levels. A lot of them do tend to give off a lot of heat. So if you've got your cactus plants and they're sort of very close, you've got the grow light there and it's giving off a lot of heat, then it can encourage them to grow quite quick and stretch out. But I haven't had that problem happen with mine under grow lights, but I would have mine on only during the winter and for a few hours a day. When cactus plants are overwintering, they don't really necessarily need the bright light as such. It's just mainly just to give them a bit of a booster. But if you've got plants always under grow lights, and a lot of people grow only under grow lights, and you find that your plants are growing stretched out, etoliated, there's either two things it can actually be. One is that the grow lights are too close to above the plants, or they're too far away and they're not getting too much light where they're growing too fast, or they're not getting enough light. Because people think of stretched out cacti as just down to not getting enough light, but they can also grow stretch out if there's too much heat and too much light. And obviously if you're using grow lights, then you're going to be having them indoors where the heating is on in the house, or it's warm. And this, the combination of heat and too much light can also make them stretch out. It's very difficult to actually answer that question because it really does depend on, one, what type of plants you have, how far you have the grow lights above them. And I would have mine, as you can see here in this video clip, you can see that the grow lights are on. I have mine probably about 3 feet from the top of the plants. And that seems to work perfectly well for my plants in my grow room. But if they were certainly growing stretched out, and they were growing stretched out very fast, and I knew they were getting enough light. In other words, if the light is coming all across the table, then I would probably bring it higher up with the light. But it is a very tough question to answer because it can depend on many different things. Usually if plants are growing stretched out and under grow lights, it's too much heat probably coming from the grow lights, or they're having too much light. Combination of too much light, too much heat will definitely encourage etoliation. And if the whole table is lit up and the lights are on for plenty of hours a day and they're still growing stretch, I think that's possibly what's happening. So maybe, as I say, what is the right light level to have the grow lights on? It depends on the actual type of grow light you've got and the brand of grow light. With the ones I have sort of Mars Hydro and Spider Farm, and they recommend sort of 30 centimeters above, and it depends if you're growing seedlings as well, and obviously the height of your plant, because it does depend on so many things. So sorry I can't really answer that question very well, Brittany, but if your plants are growing stretched out and you've got them under grow lights, it's either down to they're too close to the grow lights, too much heat, or it's down to them not getting enough light. But if the grow lights are on for at least 6 hours, 7 hours a day, and they're still growing stretched, and the table is all lit up and they're bright, then I'm pretty much sure they're getting too much light. So it's a sign that you need to rise the grow lights higher up from above the plant, at least 3 feet above. And also, if it's possible, keep the room cool. In my office where I have my grow lights, I keep the heating sort of as low as possible in there because I don't want to encourage too much heat. But as I say, it's because I'm overwintering them with the grow lights. It'd be different if I had them in there all through the year. So I wish I could help you more with that, unfortunately, but I can't. But I hope I've given you a bit of an idea of what can cause the etoliation if they're under grow lights. So guys, that's all the questions answered with the August Q&A question and answers cactus and succulents video. And do let me know if you have any questions that you want to know about growing cacti and succulents, or cacti succulents in general, for the September question and answers video, which I'll be doing in a month's time. So do let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions you want to put forward for the September question and answers video. And I hope you enjoyed August question and answers video. And thank you all so much for watching. And if you haven't done already, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Do click that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload new videos. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at Desert Plants of Avalon. And for more growing tips as well, do check out my website, desertplantsofavalon.com. I want to wish you all a fantastic cactus-powered day.